Why hello there, and welcome back to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today I'm looking at the T-54 model 1947. And as with all reviews, if you want to see something in particular, let's say simulator gameplay or realistic gameplay, or just a final opinion, all those timestamps are below. Feel free to check those out. And let's get started with the garage portion. So the T-54 model 1947 is an rank 5 8.0 battle rating Soviet medium tank. A lot of people think this tank is similar to the T-54 1951, and you're pretty correct in thinking that. It is a very similar machine. However, there are some distinct differences. Alright, the first one, the T-54 model 1951, is half a ton lighter than the 47, and that might not seem like a lot, but they also have the same engine, same horsepower, same RPM, and same top speed. That basically means that the model 1947 is a little bit slower. It's a little more sluggish in terms of getting up to speed, but it can get to and maintain the same speed as a model 1951. Now, the reason it's a half ton heavier is the front armor. So let's flash up the armor. On the front of this tank, you have 120 millimeters thick upper glacis here. Lower glacis of also 120 millimeters. The lower glacis is not really weak. People shoot it like it is weak, and I have been knocked out by people shooting here, but more often than not, it's because I was coming over a little rise and they shot it like this when it's not nearly as thick. On flat ground, this is effectively 250 millimeters of armor. On flat ground, this is over 200, and as it goes up, it works its way up to about 225. From about 200. So it has, in my opinion, the armor value 200 is kind of a magical number. I find that tanks with 200 millimeters of armor at the front generally are very effective at taking hits out past about 400 to 500 meters. Anything past that, a lot of tanks need to switch to APCR to have a good shot at penetrating, and they have to hit the right angle at that point. Because something APCR doesn't have is it doesn't have the same normalization as standard AP shells, which would help against a front plate that's angled at about, 45 degrees or more. Let's see what, actually we can just see from the slope. It's 60 degrees is the constructional armor slope angle. This plate is back at 60 degrees. The lower plate is back at 53 degrees. Right, so the front plate on the model 1947 is really durable, really tough. The T-54 model 1951, its front plate is only 100 millimeters thick. It's 100 millimeters on the bottom too, but this is about as thick as the lower parts of the upper plate, and the max you're going to get from this thing is about 190 millimeters of effective armor at the best case scenario from this tank. So it doesn't reach that 200 mark. Whereas the model 1947 starts at that 200 mark and can get all the way up to about 225, 230. So the model 47 has sort of the break point for frontal hull armor, and I think you'll see that in one of the replays. Now the turret is sort of the most obvious difference between this tank and the model 1951. It's a more weirdly shaped turret. It follows more of sort of the IS-3 design of turret, where you have sort of juts out in the front and then is rather conal in the back. You can kind of see elements of that design here. It sort of juts forward and slopes back pretty hard. The front of the turret, 200 millimeters of armor, right? The difference between this turret and the model 1951's turret is there are situations where this armor is about 200. It's actually fairly close to its effective thickness, and they're usually along these flat parts, right? It's obviously as you go up, down, left, right, not really down. I'll explain that in a second, but up and left or right, the turret gets proportionally thicker until eventually it's just you cannot pen this tank. One major drawback of this turret, because I actually prefer this turret, and I'll tell you why. It's really small. It's really short and pretty compact. Look at the T-54 model 1951. It's a little bit taller, and the face of it is a little bit wider. However, it's sloped, so I guess I would argue that the places where you can penetrate it are a little bit larger. However, they are sloped, and their effective thickness overall is better than the other turret. However, this turret, the face just seems a little bit smaller, and the sloping is more hardcore along the sides. So it's easier for you to get those quick deflections and things like that, in my experience. The downside of this turret, and the reason why the 1951 has the better turret, in my opinion, I like this turret, but it's not the best turret. You can kind of see it from this angle. Follow the gun barrel, bottom of the gun barrel. It goes into the tank, and then the turret takes over, and it goes down right here. This is basically a shot trap. Early T-54 models had these shot traps, and especially with this turret design on the T-54-1, which is basically the tank we have in the game. It has the 80mm of side armor, which was an upgrade from the first T-54 models. Because this tank was basically developed immediately after World War II. Soviet planners started working on T-54s, and this is the one we have in the game, as far as I can tell, is a T-54-1, which had upgraded side armor and bottom armor and turret and top of the turret armor, and was also equipped with machine guns. But this shot trap means that when the shell comes in here, if it hits here, misses the upper plate, and hits the bottom of this turret, it's going to go through the roof and go into the crew compartment. I have experience being knocked out by that. It is a little painful. But obviously on the model 1951, that's not a problem. There isn't a shot trap because the turret is flush to the roof of the tank. That was something that Soviet designers realized and corrected in future models. So the turret from the front is equivalent, in my opinion. I like this one a little better because it's smaller overall. However, it has its downsides with this shot trap. From the side, this tank is basically the same, 80mm. That's the same as, interestingly enough, that's the same as a King Tiger's armor, except you don't have a skirt here and the tracks don't cover quite as much. But 80mm of side armor, so if you hit this thing in the side of the hull, you're going to cause some serious issues for it. Side of the turret, fairly pennable. About 170mm of armor is basically what you're working against at worst here. Obviously same thing on the other side. The T-54, the turret armor is much thicker on the sides. You can see it goes all the way down to 160, but it maxes about 200 or so. So the turret in general is very tough from the side on the T-54 model 1951. On the 47, not quite as much. It's not quite as tough, however it is still pretty short, pretty small target. But the thing with all the T-54 variants is that you want to be attacking, have your enemy to the front, and then be able to angle your side kind of like this. Very slight, but give it enough. Because it has very durable front plate, a very durable turret. Its side armor and rear armor is obviously not that durable because it still wants to be a light medium tank. However, it has effectively heavy tank front armor, which is what makes the T-54 such a potent little machine. So it requires so much to knock it out. In terms of crew layout, if we flash up the thing, the hull is basically a T-54. So all your standard practices of trying to knock this thing out are basically the same. You have the driver sitting here. To our left is the fuel tank, and behind the fuel tank is ammo and another fuel tank. Some more ammo. Turret is loaded with ammo. Engine, transmission, all in the back, obviously. So if you want to light this tank on fire, just anywhere back here is fine. Or if you have this side, just the front or just right here. Ammo rack explosions are going to be right in here. Your gunner sits to the right of the gun, loader on the other side, commander in the back, ammo behind them. So the tank is very, very cramped. It's a very cramped tank because it's small and it has 4 crew members. So that's kind of the layout inside. It's sort of what you expect from a T-54. Main ammo rack is right here, though. So that's where you're going to get your biggest boom. In terms of speed, like I said, its top speed is 45 kilometers an hour, just like the model 1951. Engine power RPM are the same. It's slightly heavier, though, so your power to weight ratio isn't quite as good. So it will take a little bit longer to get up to that speed. Turret rotation 10 degrees a second, fairly consistent and average. Not bad. But let's talk about the gun. The vertical guidance of the gun. 4 degrees of gun depression, 17 degrees of elevation. Not a lot of elevation, not a hell of a lot of degrees of gun depression. But, you know, Russian tanks generally don't have very good gun depression. The heavy tanks only have something like 3 degrees, which isn't very good. Now, ammunition choices. It's basically the same ammunition choices you get on the model 1951. It's this BR-412 suite of ammunition. The standard AP is fine for dealing with the sides of German tanks. The front, you'd have to get really close to deal with the front. This 412B, a little bit better penetration, same muzzle velocity, so 895 meters per second. It's a very accurate shell, in my opinion. It's a very good muzzle velocity to engage targets at range or up close. And then you have this kicker, which is the final ammunition, the BR-412D. This is the ammunition that packs a lot of punch. A little bit slower muzzle velocity, 887, but that's all right because you're increasing penetration by a lot. And you can penetrate with this ammunition. You can actually penetrate the front of a King Tiger's turret, Henschel variant, and the 105 variant, out to about 1,000 meters or so. So it has a very good. It carries that penetration across range, and it's really, really nice. HE, I've never fired HE from this gun. I don't recommend it. Because it's just, I mean, it's 100 millimeter HE, which is fine. It's better than 88, and it has good muzzle velocity, but it's just not that effective. You might as well just be firing this BR-412D. If you have this BR-412 standard ammunition, your job should be a flanking medium. You should be getting up in their face and flanking. If you're here on this BR-412B ammunition, you can be a little farther away, but you're still in that sort of flanking role, because you can only reliably pen the front of a turret at about 100 meters. Once you get this D ammunition, BR-412D, now it goes out to 1,000 meters, and you can engage at basically any range and feel pretty good about yourself. So, ammunition loadout, just the same as the 1951. The BR-412D ammunition is clearly the choice, though. Great muzzle velocity, very good accuracy at range, and the rate of fire is pretty good. I have mine at just under 15 seconds, which is pretty good. That's very competitive at this tier. So, kind of an overview of what you're getting with this tank. This is a T-54. It's very similar to the T-54 1951. The difference is this front plate is thicker, and it gets over that break point of 200 millimeters of front armor. The turret is pretty good as well. It's overall a smaller target. It does have some downsides like this shot trap. However, it's a good turret nonetheless. Side armor isn't very good, rear armor isn't very good, but that's kind of what you expect. If you want fires in this tank, shoot it right here. The driver sits here. Ammo, shoot it right here. Or right here for fire, right here for fire. I mean, it's your classic sort of layout. Fire stuff in the back, ammo kind of towards the front, driver sits in the front. So, generally don't shoot the turret. If you have the side of the tank, don't be shooting at the turret. Shoot in here. You have a much better chance of knocking it out. So, yeah, that's a overview of the T-54 model 1947 from the garage, but let's see it on the battlefield. So here we are in a realistic battle on Kuban. This is a domination game mode. I'm driving the T-54 model 1947. Now, the thing about when you play this tank, it's an 8.0 battle rating, so you basically play with T-54s and maybe a couple of IS-4s. And the occasional IS-3 as well. Rank 5 for the Russians, really, really strong. Rank 5 for the Germans, less so, just in terms of how the game plays out. You generally see a lot of model 1951s, and I think that's mainly because that's the tank people have. In my opinion, once you get the model 1947, you shouldn't feel obligated to get the 1951. it's not, in my opinion, it's not a huge upgrade in terms of just power. However, they're both still really, really good tanks. I would just, if I was doing it, I would get the Model 1947 and then go for the IS-4 or the IS-3. Now, the gun on this tank, on maps like Kuban, which are smaller maps, this gun can basically penetrate any tank from any range. It's a really, really effective gun. And I'm sure, you know, everyone's aware of that based on dealing with T-54s, and if you get anywhere near the side of the turret of a Tiger II, it just explodes. Granted, that shot doesn't happen in simulator, but in realistic, that's a very doable shot. And the muzzle velocity is plenty good enough to do those long-range shots. Because, I mean, you're using this 100mm gun. In my opinion, this 100mm gun is the best gun in the game. Like, hands down. It delivers so much punch. It has great accuracy at range, at least in my experience. And it's just a gun that you can get used to really, really quick. So I'd say if you were, I still am of the opinion that a T-54 variant should be your first rank 5 tank for the Soviets. And we're going to give the armor a little bit of a workout up here, if I'm not mistaken. Where this is basically how rank 5 matches go. We've rushed forward, capped C, capping A, capping B. You know, we're in pretty strong control of the map. And Tiger IIs beware. You know, there's a reason people spam these things, and they're really, really strong. So that shot. The reason I took damage, I think what happened was it bounced. I deflected it with my upper plate, and it bounced into my gun, or shrapnel went into my gun and disabled it. So I'm gonna have to repair the gun. A little bit of a downer, but not that worried about it. And something I'm sure you're aware of if you play rank 5 with the Russians, every second counts when it comes to getting kills, doing damage, things like that. It's really ultra competitive to get, you know, kills and things like that. It's definitely a situation where you're running around and sometimes your team is just really, really good or just really OP that day, and they just run a train. And I was trying to think of how you could balance rank 5. I was thinking, you know what, the Germans need like a Leopard 1 variant, maybe a prototype, and the Americans I think are going to be fine because they have Korea era heavy tanks like the M103, which should be very competitive, I think, with the T-54. You have, now this guy, feel like I should have had a, you feel dirty. I mean, every one of his crew members took a bit there. This tank is just really, really strong. It's a T-54. T-54s are all, by nature, very strong. When having a hit that doesn't do serious damage to an enemy tank is surprising. And you can kind of see where I'm taking those hits. I've taken 4 hits off the front of my upper plate there. And I'm telling you, that 200mm threshold I think is really important. There's another hit right there. And that was definitely from a player. That's from that Tiger II out there. I think it's a P. So I'm not really worried about his gun, but that's the thing. You really don't have to worry about people's guns in this tank at range. Maybe a Yag Tiger that just hits you flush in the front is probably going to give you an issue, but it's very, at range, this tank is very durable. Just keep your front facing to the enemy. That's really how you play in a T-54. Use your speed, flank, or if you have to engage them from the front, keep your armor facing them and just shoot them in the face. That basically is the MO of this tank. And it works. I think when this tank gets more competition in terms of American tanks and new German tanks, kind of tanks that can't engage at range, so it has to close, but but also tanks that are just really heavily armored. Like, I would really like to see an E100 or a Mouse or something like that. If I had to pick, I'd prefer the E100 over the Mouse, just because it's a little lighter. It's not quite as immobile and impossible to move. So, you know. But this game is pretty much on wrap. We're just trying to clean up here. And this is the part of the battle where if you get the opponent on the back heel, the T-54, both variants, will just run trains on the enemy. It's to some degree not fair, because this tank is so fast it gets 2 spawns in simulator battle now. And yeah, because in realistic it's the point system. And I mean, really in all modes it does, because if you have a 1951, you have 2 T-54s. You know, so run away, bam! That was kind of cool when it happened. So, but however, in terms of, I know a lot of people say the T-54 model 1951 shouldn't be in the game, and I can kind of understand why they say it. I personally don't agree with it, because I think if you're going to add tanks, especially American tanks from Korea, every country needs a similar tank, and I think some of the American tanks are being added, and future tanks that undoubtedly will be added will be from the 1951 time period, easy. But however, this model 1947 is absolutely, I think, fair game for implementation in the game, just because, I mean, this was designed directly after World War II rather. So it really does fit the whole World War II to Korea era. So, you know. And if this one can be in the game, it's not like the 1951 is any different. You see what I'm saying? They're both, in my opinion, they're very, very similar tanks with a couple minor major differences, but in terms of how you play them, not really different at all. I think the issue is they just don't really have competition for effective competition on some of these maps like Kuban, which is more about shortening the range of engagement and things like that. But we're going to win this battle pretty handily. That's basically it. It's just, I mean, a swarm of T-54s is nigh unstoppable. The enemy, I mean, the Russian teams will struggle on maps that are longer range, like Kursk and Mozdok. However, with T-54s, I mean, it's just so good at so many things that I really don't. I struggle to see the win rate of Russian rank 5 teams to be below 80–90%. I think I can't remember if I've actually lost in this tank. I think I have a 100% win rate in this tank, and that's not because it's not like I was playing, you know, super well and this is just, you know, my tank. No, it's because the tank is really strong. I mean, which is why you see this thing spammed all day long. But just giving this Panther the good news a little bit. But that's going to be the end of the game. You know, fun game. Driving a T-54 around is always pretty fun. But let's move on to the next replay. So here we are in a simulator battle on Poland. Now, Poland is an interesting map because in my opinion, it's a hybrid map. It really is. It plays, every tank can find its spot on Poland. I generally think that German guns have an advantage. However, as I've said before, I think the 100mm gun on the T-54 is just simply the best gun in the game in terms of punch and effectiveness at range and all different types of ways of looking at it. German guns are, in my opinion, too focused on long-range engagements and suffer in the short range. Rate of fire is generally better. However, the lack of, I guess, serious punch kind of knocks it out of the, just kind of takes it out of consideration to me. I prefer to play more aggressively and try and take the fight to the enemy rather than wait for them. So that's probably why I struggle in German tanks a little bit. I generally have better games in Russian tanks, not always because Russian tanks are strong, although Russian tanks are generally fairly strong. I think the playstyle just fits what I want to do better. I'm going to be firing on the move at a Jagdpanther out there. Obviously, I mean, it's difficult to hit anything on the move. There's a couple ZSU 57-2s on my team. Now, Poland, I think, is a really, really rough map for the ZSU. These wide open fields just completely negate its effectiveness, in my opinion. The close city streets, it's all about who gets the first shot. And a lot of times I would take the other tank over the ZSU just because of how fragile it is. But people are driving it because it is a strong tank, even though it is designed for the anti-aircraft role. I'd say in realistic battle, actually no, in simulator battle it has the strongest because of the spotting system. The fact that it's more difficult to see and hit. But so I take a hit in the face from this Jagdpanther. I'm trying to get his range here. I hit him right below. It looks like shrapnel hit him right below the gun thing, but he's going to be laying into me at range. Obviously, I don't know what ammunition he's using, but it's, you know, classic German high velocity ammunition, so it should be pretty good. However, he's just going to fire at me and not really do anything to me. And that's that. In my opinion, that's that extra hull armor. I think he could actually get through the front of a T-54 51 from this range. However, the 47 has that break point of armor where from the front I really don't think he can actually penetrate me. But I get lucky there. That shot went through his lower plate. I wanted to send it through his front plate because at this range it takes away a little bit of the angling. But you know, a kill's a kill. I got lucky there, but you know, whatever. Now coming up here, I'm going to make a little bit of a mistake. I'm going to expose my side, and someone's going to get to shoot me in the side, which is going to knock out my tank. Right here, I should not have gone this far forward. And you're going to see this how the shell got in there. See, from the side, it went through the side armor, hit that ammo, and then just killed everybody. You know, that's poor play by me. I shouldn't have gone out from behind the house. But this tank gets 2 spawns in simulator, so I've got it back again. And by the time I get there, the game's actually going to be in doubt, which is, I think in simulator is the true test of a tank. Because in simulator, it's all those assistances about, you know, aiming and target spotting are taken away, and it's really the tank becomes a tool, and your ability to drive that tank I feel like is more prevalent. But the things that kind of take your performance to the next level are, you know, the gun of the tank, how fast is it, what's the armor like, things like that, excuse me. So by the time I get back, we actually would have lost quite a few tanks. I mean, this is only a 4-on-5, with the advantage being towards the Germans. However, they've all taken tanks that get 1 respawn. So, and I believe we've taken tanks that all get 2 respawns. So it is actually still, I think, 8-on-5. But the German team actually played this fairly intelligently. Now, I say fairly. They actually played it really well. Some of the decisions that are going to be made at the end of the game aren't going to be very good, but on a whole, on average, the way they approached this map was good. Rather than trying to duke it out in the city with us, because we're faster and we have more avenues of approach into the city because we don't have a lake block in the way. A few of them are going to take position up on that ridge across the lake. And that's going to give them hull down opportunities to fire into the city at us. Because when they're in that position, we have to come to them. And they can just sit there and wait for us. So one of our T-54s was knocked out. A little unfortunate. But I'm rushing my way back. I'm doing the 45 km/h speed limit. I mean, this tank gets to 45, stays at 45, and can really haul butt once it gets up to speed. I mean, the issue is it's a little bit slower getting up to speed, but yeah, it's alright. It happens. I'm quite happy trading that extra, you know, however much power to weight ratio for the little bit of extra armor on the front, that 40 extra millimeters, or 20 rather, 20 extra millimeters, because it gives me that 200 millimeter breakpoint, which I really think is important. I can't always back it up with evidence, like statistical evidence and gameplay evidence, but it just feels like it's really, really important, so I'm going to stick to how it feels. So I'm basically back at where I got knocked out, a little bit farther in. And I'm kind of looking around for targets. I know there was a heavy tank who was off to the side, more towards their cap, or the A cap, but so I'm kind of looking for him. Because he got me last time, and obviously I like to get people who got me. But there's a guy up over there. I think that's actually him, and he just took a shot at me and gave me his position. So I'm going to put a shot into the face of his turret. It hit the mantlet, so it didn't go through, but I'm going to adjust ever so slightly to the right, because that's the best place to shoot. And that low wall actually really helped me there, and it took part of the shell for me. But he didn't move, and my next shot goes to the face of his turret and knocks him out. But you can kind of see that, I mean, this low wall helped, but even at this angle, I don't think he was going to penetrate my side. So I was pretty impregnable, in my opinion, to his fire. And I just got to repair the tracks now. They ate the shop for me. Hero tracks, saving the day. But now it's time to move forward, because there is a Jagdtiger up here, and he needs to be dealt with. So we're going to mosey our way up to here. And we're actually going to catch him sort of with his pants down over here. He's going to be full side on. And the Jagdtiger's gun I'm always scared of, but I'm not quite sure if I have reason to be. I think I sometimes overvalue the power of that gun, but get the side of a Jagdtiger, first shot goes in, knocks him out. If you hit the side of a Jagdtiger, I mean, the thing's made of ammo on the side, so it's not a particularly impossible target. And that's going to be the enemy team. They're all knocked out, and now we can fire some victory shells and go on to get more vodka, and yeah. So let's move on to the final opinion, shall we? So opinion time. What do I think of the T-54 model 1947? I think my opinion should be clear. This is a T-54. It's a very strong tank. I think that if you're grinding up your Russian line and you're looking for your first rank 5, this should be your first rank 5, because it's on the way to the 1951. But also, this tank is a 8.0 battle rating in its own right. It's a really, really durable, very tough little tank, and it has the same gun as the model 1951. So if you get this tank and you're looking to spice up your garage, I would go IS-3, IS-4, and then go to the 1951, and then pursue the AAA. Now, the AAA, I think you can really get it at any time. I would rather get the 54s and the heavy tanks first. The ISU 152 is definitely last on the list, because it's just not that good in my opinion, unless it's been sneakily buffed recently. But a 6.7 battle rating at rank 5, that should tell you something about it. You know, 7.0, the IS-3 got dropped a little bit. What is it in arcade? Is it still the same? Yeah, 7.0. 8.0, 8.0, 8.0. It's clear what the 3 favorite tanks are right here. ZSU is a 7.0. I can understand that. I think being a 7.0, it still sees everything. I mean, competition isn't exactly fierce, but also it's not, in my opinion, the armor doesn't exactly improve for the Germans other than the Jagdtiger. So this thing still sees basically, and this thing can see Jagdtigers. So it basically sees the same armor profile no matter what. But the ISU 152 is not very good. So if you're grinding down these lines, I think your first tank should be the 47, and then maybe IS-3, IS-4. But if you really love the 47, go ahead and get the 51. The 51 is basically the same tank. It'll give you a second T-54 in realistic battles, and it's just a really, really good tank in its own right. IS-3 is a pretty good tank. IS-4 is a really good tank. So you really can't go wrong right in here. It's all about what you want. If you really enjoyed your IS-2, IS-3 is probably for you. I mean, it's basically the same battle rating, 0.3 higher, and at least the IS-4, which is a really good tank. So your first rank 5 for the Russians, I think, should be the T-54 model 1947. It's really, really strong, has a great gun, in my opinion, best gun in the game. Very effective front armor. Side armor's weak, rear armor's weak, but it's a medium tank. It's designed to be a little quicker, and it is kind of quick, which is nice. So that's kind of what you get with this tank. You get a very potent little ball of death. So yeah, that basically sums up the review for this tank. It's really strong. I think in the future what they should do is they should take post-World War II vehicles and make like a 9.0 battle rating, or maybe make a tier where T-54s would be 9.0. Maybe you come up with if like the M103 is just broken and overpowered, or the Walker Bulldog, or whatever medium, top of the tier medium tank they put in for the Americans. If it's really, really strong like T-54, put it at a 9.0 and basically make 9.0 the really, really strong tanks. Maybe you put a super heavy tank for the Germans, maybe put the Leopard for the Germans at that rank, things like that. Because the T-54 is just kind of wreck face, and it's a little unfair sometimes. But, you know, that's for Gaijin to decide. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for future reviews, put them down in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to read them, answer questions, laugh at funny jokes, all kinds of things. So thanks for watching. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.